drama. That's unrealistic, isn't it? Okay. So anyhow, all your advice to at the Sarah Fraser Show everywhere. TikTok, IG. I would love to know how you got your 2.5-year-old to stop hitting you, stop running away from you, eating healthy. Any suggestions, any books, whatever. It'd be great. There you go. All right. I did want to switch gears. Big pop culture weekend, mostly in the Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis drama. So here's the thing. I did not initially, this Danny Masterson, if you're like, who in the what? I got down the rabbit hole this weekend of Danny Masterson and Bijou Phillips, his wife. They've been married for like 10 years. They've been together quite a while. 2010, 2007. And Bijou Phillips is, a part of the Mamas and the Papas. And Mackenzie Phillips, I'm sure you famously remember Mackenzie Phillips. She and I can remember this episode of Oprah so much. Mackenzie Phillips went on Oprah years ago and admitted at 19 she started having it didn't start out as consensual. Her father, who was John Phillips, famous for the Mamas and the Papas, their songs, and he was a complete drug addict, raped her at 19, like the eve before her wedding. Okay. She woke up in a drug stupor. They'd done drugs together and he was having sex with her. And then then she went on, got married, and it continued as a consensual relationship. I mean, for her to come on national TV and say this back when millions of people watched Oprah. I mean, this was so shocking and revolutionary. And Mackenzie Phillips's sister is China Phillips of, remember Wilson Phillips? Hold on for one more day. It really, it was way back in the 80s. Oh my God. That was probably one of the first songs. I was probably 6. I don't even know. 8? Anyway, so young when that song came out. And they had, it was such a great song. And Bijou Phillips is also Mackenzie Phillips and China Phillips' sister. Now, they all have different parents, different mothers. But Bijou Phillips's life was so crazy. John Phillips was her dad. Her parents were both drug addicts. They fought so much over custody. She spent a lot of her life in foster care and is still close with the foster parents. I mean, this is wild in the 90s because you think they're rich. And then at 14, she was emancipated from her parents, lived in a New York City, Fifth Avenue, or Park Avenue apartment, and her nanny basically was raising her. She started partying, doing drugs. This is Danny Masterson's wife. Got down the rabbit hole, you guys. Didn't pay a ton of attention to the Danny Masterson initial case because it was a rape case. He's gone to jail. He's in jail 30 years for raping 3 women. Now, they could only convict him on 2. One, they didn't have enough evidence, hung jury. They could never decide. So there was no charge. Well, there was no verdict on that. But he's serving 30 years, right? So he now will be 77 when he's eligible for parole, although I'm sure they'll appeal. I mean, it will be interesting to see. And, the other big element of this story is Scientology. That Danny Masterson is a well-known Scientologist, very high up, and was untouchable, supposedly, within the Scientology world. And these women that he assaulted were Scientologists. One woman, Jane Doe 1, even came out, her mother has not spoken to her since she came out and said, Danny did this to me. Hasn't spoken to her. Can you imagine your own daughter? I can't imagine now being a parent. Hasn't spoken to her for years. And all this woman does, Jane Doe, on Mother's Day is read the last letter that her mother's still alive, is still a devout Scientologist, reads a letter that her mother had wrote to her years ago, just saying how much she loved her. And it's oh my God. I mean, this story is so sad on so many levels. And even Bijou Phillips, Danny Masterson's wife. I mean, God, she had this tragic childhood, in foster care, these drug addict parents, emancipated, had her own drug battle, gone into a rehab, and then credits Danny for essentially keeping her sober and saving her life. Became an actress herself. But just such an awful, such a tough upbringing. She and Danny met at a poker tournament in Las Vegas. They were both Scientologists. So Bijou Phillips is one. And she's been visibly, heartbroken the entire time. I'm sure because she probably knew him as an entirely different person. Then Bijou, February of 2017, had been suffering from kidney disease for 5 years. She was born with small kidneys and had been battling the disease by living a stress-free life, eating a vegan diet, getting dialysis. But she suffered a blood infection, so she had to have a kidney transplant. This girl. And I mean, supposedly she doesn't believe her sister Mackenzie Phillips that they had a sexual relationship. That's according to her Wikipedia page. They have now Danny and Bijou have a child together. I mean, the whole thing is like devastating. Of course, mostly devastating to Jane 1, Jane Doe, and Jane 3, right? Their lives were ruined. I mean, oh my God, they go into the detail of after being raped by him. I mean, one lost their career because they were Scientology actress. They lost their career. One says, she's married now, but it's hard to even sleep next to her husband. She says what Danny did to her was so traumatic. I don't know if it was like sealed in court or if she never even had to tell the story. But she says he was really a psychological predator in that, he would, I guess, ice her out and not speak to her and threaten her, all these things, all these psychological games. And so she became very, like just looking for any praise, anything from him. And then, he might say something nice to her. And then, he's convicted of drugging these women, giving them alcoholic drinks, kind of like, I guess different than Bill Cosby, because Bill Cosby gave them pills. But I guess Danny could have done that in the drinks. They were passed out and then, had sex with them. One said she was so brutally raped, she was like throwing up in her mouth when she kind of came to, realized what happened. I mean, awful, awful. Okay. He's going to jail for 30 years, where he should be. But the story that exploded over the weekend, because I've read like everything now about this, is Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. They've been friends with Danny Masterson for 25 years. They were all on that 70s show together. They've done other things. So blind items have come out of people that have worked on, TV shows with Masterson and Ashton Kutcher. And they've said Ashton Kutcher, like Danny Masterson with his brother. And here's where I disagree with the general public. So Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher wrote character letters, which happens like in any major trial, basically trying to get leniency from the judge, saying this person that we know is this way. And they've just been destroyed all weekend long on the internet. And then they put out this kind of very weird statement that they looked like they were reading and they filmed on their phone. Ashton and Mila did that. They didn't think it would be public. They've known him for 25 years. The family asked them to do it. And, they feel for the victims. They side with the victims, but their experience with Danny was none of that. Like, he was great. Ashton Kutcher, credits him for keeping him sober when he moved to Hollywood because Danny wasn't into drugs, kept him away from the Hollywood drug scene. Mila says he was like an older brother, gave them guidance in the business. Okay. My thing is, what did you guys like? They've been friends for 25 fucking years. Did people not expect that they were going to write character letters in favor of him? I mean, a person who is evil doesn't treat everyone. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they treat other people differently. And clearly Masterson had a different relationship with them. Ashton Kutcher even said, Masterson is one of like the only 5 people he would ever trust with his kids. Okay, clearly they had a totally different relationship. Don't you think if you had a fucking friend for 25 years, they'd write you a character letter? I mean, come on. People are like, boycott Ashton Kutcher's business. But no. I mean, they probably realize what Danny's like too, but they've been friends with someone for 25 years. Maybe they don't realize it. They're certainly not going to tell the public now. Maybe they will someday. But I mean, of course, what do people expect? Of course they were going to write a letter. I just feel like it's so stupid that people can't disassociate one from the other. They didn't see that side of him. They probably do not believe he did it. Here he is. He's done it. He's been convicted. He's going to spend 30 years in jail where he should be. And, of course, the people that should be going to jail too are Scientologists, although they're working on that because David Miscavige and his wife are now missing. So that will all come to a head. But I'm just like, people, the stupid crap the internet gets just fixates on is just yeah, I mean, now, would you have done that for your friend of 25 years? I mean, I would think you would if you were friends with someone for 25 years that you were that close with, that you considered one of the only people that was going to watch your children. But yeah, everybody's on the internet like, screw these guys. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, and two things get to be true. I'm sure they do have complete empathy. They're in shock that this guy would do this. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But I mean, I'm just not that shocked that they wrote like character letters for him. I'm actually more shocked they came out with a statement. They probably came out with a statement more to save face in Hollywood and their businesses, because Ashton Kutcher's a well-known businessman. He's been on Shark Tank and everything else. So they probably were like getting pressure from investors and stuff like, hey, you guys got to like make a statement. You got to make a statement so that, but I'm like, I wouldn't even have made a fucking statement. Like, you've been friends with him for 25 years. Like, of course you didn't see that side of him. I actually agreed with Christina Ricci, although she was basically taking a dig at Ashton and Mila Kunis. She wrote on her social media and she's like, yeah, it's hard for victims to come forward. It's awful. We have to believe women. We do. But like, I'm not, but also, she made the point of like, yeah, they didn't see that side of Danny. They were friends with him for years. And by the way, I mean, there are blind items coming out. People that worked on set that say he was an amazing person to work with. Probably was in one capacity. I mean, it's the same thing. I think the struggles that the people on the Cosby Show have. And and who's the wife of like Bill Cosby that's at Howard University and she always gets in trouble when she defends Bill Cosby? Anyway, it's just the internet fucking drives me crazy. Okay. Anyhow, you can weigh in on all this. Leave me a comment. Love you guys. I don't know. Would you write if your dear friend of 25 years was on trial for rape and you were asking for, wouldn't you write them a letter? I mean, do people have no friend loyalty anymore? Although my grandmother always gave me the best advice ever. And she said, Sarah, the number of good friends that you have is the number of thumbs. Always when I'm making a good point at my mic. The number of good friends you have is the number of thumbs that you have. So there aren't many in this world. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Bye.